name's Joey, and I'm joined by Neil.
Hello.
And by Dom.
Hello there.
Let's start with moments of the week. Neil, have you got one?
Many moments, but I'm going to go for Gervaine. Yeah, I mean, come off it. I mean, loads of good stuff happened, but I mean, that goal to come off the bench and score within a few seconds and the way that we kind of crafted it was superb. So that is my moment. Brilliant stuff from Dabo. Westbrook was involved and just, he seems quite sort of intense, Gervaine Castanier, from what I've seen of him so far. And that goal was the sign of an intense man. And the celebration was just as intense as well. So good on him.
Hitting both posts.
That's how you do it, isn't it?
Yes, please. I'm going to have as much of that as I can. Neil, I get a strong sense from you that you're a big Dabo guy.
Well into him. It all stems from the goal Harula scored the other night in the cup. Just watching Dabo steamroll his way past people, and then just to continue doing it through that match, and then he kept at it again. So it's really early days, and it's really, really easy for us because we don't know many of these players to kind of pin all of our hopes and dreams on these little portions of appearances. Which I'm doing that definitely with Dabo, but from what I've seen of him so far, I enjoy it a lot.
I felt like that curve that Dujon Sterling went on last season, where he needed that Bristol Rovers game to really up his game and get into it. I feel like Dabo's done that over the space of like 3 games. Where
Yeah, do it.
Felt like he made that assist against Exeter, and then since that moment, he's been really good, hasn't he? By the looks of it.
He's just beast, man. He's just crazy the way he storms past people. I'm going to whisper it quietly, but actually say it at a normal volume. I already prefer him to Sterling, and that's weird thing. That's a weird thing to say because I know you guys love him, and it kind of shames me for not being on the same page. But I never really got on with Sterling. This is my kind of right back already. Just really sort of direct. That's what I want.
I like the fact that you called him Tankati, Dabo.
Oh yeah, Frank the Tank.
Frank the Tank, that'll do. Dom, moment of the week.
Well, I was going to go for Castanier's goal as well. So I'm just going to go for his cameo against Exeter, where it was similarly intense, but he sort of had a moment where he's tried a 1-2 with Bakayoko, and he didn't quite get it back, and I think the ball ran for an Exeter player. He ended up giving away a yellow card. And so I've sort of got in my mind that a Castanier sort of hat trick would be a back heel, a yellow card, and then a goal from long range. So
the best thing about that bit was the ref had to postpone blowing the final whistle to give him the yellow card. It was the most needless sort of, it was like, game's over, man. You don't have to do this. Whoop, no, he's just flown through him. Let's book him, and then I can finish the game.
He's a party in a footballer, isn't he? And that's immediately clear that there's going to be he's fireworks, isn't he?
Neil, I love it.
Was it you who suggested that he looks like Nazon? Not physically necessarily, but just in the fact that there's never a dull moment, really, is there?
It wasn't, but I like it. I wish it was me. That's quite apt.
I'm going to go for, so clearly the correct answer is Gervaine Castanier. I'm interested to know whether that's 3 different pronunciations of his name.
Yeah,
I think that mine and Neil's are probably quite the same. Dom, yours sounded much more accurate and exotic. I'm going to go... Go on.
So I was watching a YouTube video earlier of like some Dutch guys FIFA save, and I was really sort of listening out to how he was pronouncing that. So,
are we Dutch, Dom? Are we Dutch? Steve McLaren has learned
it's a losing battle. It's going to be like Jerry Castanier by the end of the season.
Yeah, the Clivification of his name will be complete. I'm going to go for... Now, I feel a little bit guilty about this, but I'm going to go for the co-commentary on iFollow being provided by 500-year-old man Steve Ogruzovic. I don't know if anybody else had got with it or watched it on iFollow, but it was this isn't like a bad thing necessarily, but it was the most kind of... like old-fashioned punditry in the world. Every time a heavy tackle went in on a foreign player, he was like, "Oh, welcome to England."
Welcome to England, yeah.
There was a whole lot of that going on, kind of, and there was also a lot of thoughtful kind of analysis. He wasn't a bad pundit, but he was definitely, I think, part of the old school. I think is the way of politely putting it.
He doesn't he doesn't have the voice for radio. But I think, like you say, I mean, a lot of what he says is a little bit questionable. But at the same point, there is actually some insight there because he knows the club, and I think that's going to be worthwhile. But you just have to work your way through some of the other stuff.
And he knew about a bunch of their players. He knew about Morossi, despite not being. Like his knowledge was very clear. And when he broke down the game, especially from a keeper's point of view, he knew it was obviously it was actually very insightful. But it was just the kind of Keys and Gray kind of like really what they need to do is get into them kind of stuff that you were like, oh dear. But then saying that is basically all I ever say every week, so I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Neil, right, okay. So, my assessment of the game, for what it's worth, I thought it was overall reasonably enjoyable in the sense that I thought we'd got pretty much total control against a team that we had gone into the game saying we're going to be difficult. Then I felt we were a little bit revisionist in afterwards saying, oh no, they were rubbish. To what extent did we control them, or were Bristol Rovers just a bit bad?
I think it was very much both. So I think we looked confident. We looked like a team that had just scored 4 in the previous game, and Bristol just didn't really offer anything. I mean, they had portions of the game where they looked like they could threaten us, but I always remember back to when we won the playoffs and they were interviewing Doyle afterwards, and he even came out with some sort of statement saying, well, I thought we could deal with everything they had to throw at us without being disrespectful. And that's really how I felt by the end of the Bristol game, where you kind of felt a little bit worried because they had the spine of the team of our old players and they had JCH up front, and you kind of thought, oh, what they're going to do with this? And ultimately, they didn't really do too much. But I think a lot of that was down to the fact that we seem to be developing quite a nice sort of balance and fluidity to what we're doing. It's not perfect yet. There's still lots of mistakes, but I do really enjoy this part of the season when you're gradually starting to understand a little bit more about your team. And this is a really new feeling team. I mean, it's unusually new for us. I mean, there's only less than a handful of people you actually do know, and the ones that you do know kind of feel like different players this year. I mean, Brandon Mason, this guy so far this season is having a stormer. He's just so reliable, and there's some belief there in him. And I thought the other day he was fantastic down the left, and I think he got the man of the match again, didn't he? I'm not sure, but
3 games in a row.
I mean, sure, I get it. He is standout. I think the other day there were actually quite a few other players who kind of put in really sort of strong performances. I thought Liam Kelly is playing that role superbly at the moment in the middle. I think the other day he kind of dominated, and you sort of saw him against Agogo, and I didn't even realise Agogo was playing for the first half. It was kind of crazy dominance in the middle there against him, and up front as well. I think Matty Godden is just looking really smart, and I really enjoy that from a striker. And while you can have the sort of the mania and lunacy of someone like Bakayoko, which is always fun, and bringing them on is a great idea, I think just having someone who's very smart and understands how to play that role and kind of just cause grief when it's necessary was really noticeable from Godden. So, I mean, these are really sort of broad statements about all of our players, but that's kind of what I took out from it. But in terms of...
Are you trying to say that Bakayoko's not a smart player? I think it's my ultimate contention here, no?
No, you're saying that. I'm just going to agree with you. Yeah, I think that's basically... But I don't discredit some of the work that he does for us. And I think, if anything, Godden coming in has kind of shown a role which a lot of footballers won't like. But I think Bakayoko coming on later on in the game is a good role for him to play at this moment in time. And I don't think that's a problem with that, and that you can do some real damage against other teams by doing that. But I think first half, I think we were kind of developing a nice balance to our play. I thought Shipley in the first half he made some mistakes, but I thought some of his passing, he just had the vision and also the touch of pass just to roll it in front of players into the perfect space. But 3 or 4 times he did almost the same slotted pass. And it was just showing sort of sheer confidence, and it was like no surprise to me where like I was right before half time. But for him to get the goal, I trust him a lot in this team. And when Alan comes back, you have to kind of ask the question like who's going to drop out of it. And the way it's looking at the moment, you sort of think, well, it's got to be Shipley, Kelly, and Alan in the midfield, and Westbrook will be the one who drops out, because while I think he did all right in the first game, I think since that point he's not really kind of grasped the opportunity to really stake his claim. I'm not saying he's played poorly. I think he's not standing up as much as some of the other players around him. And being in that position, I think he absolutely needs to. So no major criticism of him, except from the fact that I think he probably could have done a little bit more.
Just quickly on Westbrook, Dom, what did you think of the performance from Westbrook on Saturday?
Yeah, it sort of feels like he's just not quite assertive enough in that centre of the pitch. And I think just the central midfield at the moment, ahead of Kelly, you just wonder whether there's quite that control or that drive in there. I mean, Shipley, I'm sort of okay with. I don't mind. He's stepping up with goals. He's getting shots away. That's sort of what you want from like a third man in a three. That sort of second man role, someone who you want to create chances or you want to hold on to the ball further up the pitch. I think we're badly missing that at the moment. We've been winning games, but just by the games we've won, have been games we've gone ahead in and sort of been able to hold on for. And whether in the games to come, in games where perhaps you fall behind and you need to call yourself back in it, I think you do need someone with a little bit more poise and a bit more drive than what Westbrook is showing.
Do you felt just on that one point you made, that you felt we held on the other day or the day before or the game before that? There's two games. I know we did first game. It was a little bit of a grind out, but since that point, I don't think we've been holding on at any point really, have we?
I don't know whether holding on is the right term. I suppose part of it is like I'm not sure whether we have the wherewithal at the moment to be able to sort of move up through the gears and really pin a team back for a long enough spell, if we were required to. Just on, without going too far ahead from the Bristol Rovers game, I know they didn't have any shots on target, but the two big chances they had came from set pieces, and those are things that can happen in games where you're only 1-0 up. So whether it's controlling games more or whether it's just being a bit more clinical, I think there's just that sort of extra edge about the team that's not quite there.
Which I kind of, in a way, I'd like to put that down to just sort of initial sort of connection or trying to develop a bit of a connection, which obviously we were really early on. But I totally agree with you on the defensive side of things. I think while I like the look of those two centre backs, I think set pieces specifically, where there's not really much order going on at the moment, and we kind of just allowing chances to happen against us, and through fortune or whatever it is, they're not punishing us at the moment, but we do quite quickly need to develop a bit more order from our set piece defensiveness. I think the fact that we haven't conceded a goal yet in the league, so obviously a good thing. I like the sheer sort of loudness of McFadzean. I think he's going to be our Doyle for this season, I think. I mean, what's close to being my moment of the week, and it doesn't really warrant it at all, but when someone came flying into Liam Kelly in the second half, and you just saw McFadzean come storming over, making an absolute meal of it, really, really laying into the player, trying to get him sent off, and you just sort of think, yeah, I forgot we don't really have that in our team, and suddenly he's back. We've got someone else who can do that for us, which, as wrong or morally sort of weird as it is, it's still important to have that sort of player in your team. And I'm not gonna hold it against any other players if they want to back up their players and then try and get someone else booked, because we want to get promoted this year. So you don't do it without getting an edge wherever you can. So no, I do like the look of those two in defence. Rose is looking very, very calm, very cool, but there's just a little bit of work to be done on the kind of defensiveness, and I guess the keeper as well is not quite as imposing as he could be at this stage. But I don't want to, in the same way, I don't want to go over the top on players. Also, I don't want to kind of create anything that's maybe not there at the moment. It's only 3 games; anything can happen in the 3 games, and we could potentially be judging something that's not even sort of enforceable just yet. So.
Where from there, Neil?
we're from there, second half, I guess. So, what else happened in the second half? So they did come into it more, and some of the players who I'd previously sort of said were playing well first half, I felt let their standards drop a little bit. Shipley was one of those. I think overall he had a good game, but he started to kind of lose his way a little bit. His passes were a bit wayward. He was letting the ball run past him a few times, which wasn't helping us keep that control, like Dom says, in that area of the pitch. We weren't kind of forcing it or making them feel any sort of pressure for a period of time. And then they did not pen us in, but they started to sort of show that they could have a bit of an attacking threat. Ultimately, they didn't have any shots on target, which says to you that they didn't really have enough about them. And I always, like I say, I always felt like we had more on them than they did on us. JCH just was fairly anonymous. He was trying his hardest to kind of bully whoever he could, and he tried to bully Mason a little bit. And muscle to muscle, he did have him, but in terms of just his general play, I didn't really see much from him that was concerned me. Obviously, one of the funny bits I've already mentioned. Actually, I mentioned on Twitter, people who don't follow him on Twitter, but he is. When you're watching him and he's not in your team, you kind of just realise just how predictable a player he can be. And the point where he kind of shielded the ball from the edge of his our area and was just basically just heading towards his own goal, and you could see that sort of jolt in his body, desperate for any sort of touch so he could do his trademark bundle himself over. And he got to about the halfway line, and that touch still hadn't come. And you just sort of see Liam Kelly making sure he was a yard away from him at all points. And then in the end, JCH was like, fuck this, I've just got to pass it back to the keeper. I'm never getting a free kick. And you sort of thought, yeah, that's how you manage him. Do not go close to him because he will dive. And these refs at this level are so terrible. They just buy it all the time. And it was good because it was with us. But when you look at it and you're trying to be a little bit more objective about it, it is so predictable. And for Liam Kelly to be that kind of composed around him was that was a good point in the match. And yeah, and then it's always one of those where I felt calm about it. We were doing a decent job. Like I said, Kelly in the midfield was running the show, and then we just needed to kind of finish it off. And then we were getting to like 10 minutes to go. I think Bakayoko was on by this point. So Godden obviously not doing the 90 minutes just yet. I'm sure he will do eventually. And then Castanier comes on, and then within 40 seconds does that. And it's only when I didn't realise just how quick it was. Weird how you watch it first time, you don't quite consider the speed of it. But then they put a video out of the goal cam behind the goal, and you kind of hear them say Castanier on the tannoy, and then almost immediately you start seeing something going on in the left-hand corner, and then they smash the ball off 2 posts and it's gone in, and you're like, wow. There have been some good debut goals, but I can't think of too many better than that in my time as a Coventry City fan. So that was very good. And he, in himself, just looks big, doesn't he? He looks. Yeah. I do wonder what happens. The fact that we haven't mentioned Harula at all makes me wonder whether at any point we kind of go for a bit of a Gibello, Castanier, one on each wing approach to things. I don't really know too much about Castanier, but I presume he's a winger. He can go on either wing. I'm kind of aiming that towards Dom, who may be able to help me.
Yeah, I think. Well, basically, like my impression of him, what I've read of him, what I've seen of him. He looks like someone who can play in either way. He looks like someone who possibly you might play him in the centre, whether that's on his own or maybe playing just behind a centre forward. That might be interesting to see. Sort of, he seems slightly more wingery than Nazon, but yeah, I think that's a good comparison. Sort of, just that someone who's got a bit of unpredictability to him. As well as just being an absolute physical specimen and not afraid to throw himself around.
I think he's got the air of a player who is constantly telling the manager that he should be played through the centre.
Yeah.
Actually, probably shouldn't be played through the centre.
I also think he's got the air of a man who is probably already telling Robbins that he needs to be starting the game, and Robbins is like, "Right, hold on, I'll give you 10 minutes. Let's give you another 10 minutes another game," because you sort of think, "Well, I've scored this now. That's me in. I'm in." And if I don't want to judge him on that because I don't know the guy at all, but you get this feeling he's so intense, and he's just like, "Yeah, I've got to be playing all the time."
Let's look forward to seeing more of him, whatever that looks like. Neil, final thoughts, or whatever thoughts you've got left.
No more thoughts. I'm thoughted out now. I just like being top four, like not having conceded any goals in the league, like being unbeaten, like stuff at the moment.
Perfect. Right, let's move on to some preview. I think we're trying to make a bit more of a conscious decision this season, aren't we, to try and not go into reams of detail, apart from last week where we were angry about Bolton, and sort of eulogise about players very early on and then find out that they're rubbish a few months later. So, right, firstly, Portsmouth tomorrow then, Dom. They are reasonably good, aren't they?
Yeah, it's sort of been a tough start to the season for them. I think they've just basically had a few issues, losing two key players from last season in Matt Clark at centre-back and Jamal Lowe on the wing, who are just huge players for them. Matt Clark went to the Premier League, although he's gone out on loan to Derby. Jamal Lowe's gone straight into the Championship and gotten 10 goals and 10 assists, that sort of number last season. So big players to replace. They've signed John Marquis from Doncaster Rovers, who scored 21 goals last season. So it shows that they still have a fair degree of strength, and they've got the money. They've been willing to spend it, or to spend apparently around $1 million on Marcus Harness from Burton, who it's just another attacking player. Ryan Williams from Rotherham, who was with them as a youth player, very good wide man. Brought in Ellis Harrison from Ipswich, so they've got an array of attacking options, and it just seems that Kenny Jackett hasn't quite figured out how to get the best out of them yet. They lost on the opening day to Shrewsbury 1-0 to the only shot in the game, having had about 20 themselves, so it was just one of those. And then they lost on Saturday to Sunderland after taking the lead. So yeah, like I said, things just haven't quite clicked for them yet. Although the constituent pieces that they've got there, another player to look out for is their left back, Lee Brown, very energetic going forward, very good at just getting crosses away quite quickly from his feet, getting forward from left backs, and he's basically been creating a fair number of their chances already. He's sort of been the key outlet while the rest of the team sort of settling down. Other ones to look out for: Tom Naylor, that holding midfielder, Ben Close, who's more of a passer. He's got a very good long shot on him, which we'll probably have to be wary of closing down. He's scored quite a few recently from just outside the box, just very nice sort of placed finishes. And then just one more to point out: Ross McCrory, who they've got on loan from Rangers, who has really caught the eye for Portsmouth fans just from pre-season. Just a very big, very energetic player, someone who can dominate. He is nominally a midfielder. That's where Rangers have put him after a spell at centre-back, but it looks like he might be played at right-back in this game because Portsmouth don't really have a first-choice right-back at the moment, but he's someone who could be quite eye-catching. In fact, it's quite a big physical team in quite a few places, and with Lee Brown and Ronan Curtis taking set pieces or putting crosses in, that's a big area to be worried about in this game, even if things aren't quite clicking for them from open play. So that's where to be worried. Although I would say it's quite a good time to be playing Portsmouth away when it's still yet to click, and they're pretty going to be good.
How do they get into the cup? How did they get on in the cup?
Weirdly, they played a week before everyone else against Birmingham, and they beat them quite convincingly, although that was a second string Birmingham side. How much?
Oh, so they do. Yeah, I was kind of hoping you'd say they'd lost, and then we could look at it and say they've lost 3 out of 4, and that would make me feel better. But...
yeah. So basically, they've won their home games and they've lost their away games thus far, for what it's worth.
Okay, and Gillingham as well.
Yeah, so the big thing about Gillingham is that this summer they have appointed Steve Evans as manager, and what usually comes with that is just a big overhaul of the squad. Usually comes to clubs with a fair amount of money, which makes his move to Gillingham quite interesting because they don't have a lot of money. They lost Tom Eaves, their 20-goal a season striker, on a free this summer. They've had to place him with Friesen Moniz. I think the players they've actually signed to replace these, about 2 or 3 strikers, have only managed about 5 goals between them. So that's what he's working with. Thus far, they sat out Saturday because they had Berry. So, they obviously didn't play. But they've had sort of 2 good halves thus far in their opening 2 league games and just haven't been able to sustain it. It's a very energetic side. There isn't too much control about what they do. They've got quite a few sort of big physical players like Usainu Cisse, who signed from MK Dons, and Mikael Mandron, who they brought in from Colchester. Marshall out wide.
Marshall.
Yeah. Yeah, they got another one in from Bournemouth, Mikhail Injoli, who was on Kilmarnock last season. Just 2 very quick wingers. So sort of just looks like their approach at the moment is sort of getting the ball forward quickly and just getting as many sort of quick and big players around the ball and trying to pressure teams. But they just don't quite have the quality, the energy levels possibly to sustain it over 90 minutes. So that's that.
I'm going to ask you for predictions, Dom.
I think we might get a decent result tomorrow night at Portsmouth, whether that's a draw or a win. It's just something that I've got a feeling for. Gillingham 1, I've got less of a feeling, but why not go for the win and put the kiss of death on that?
This guy, I love it.
Overall, all things considered, especially how disappointing the Bolton result looks in the context of all of the other games that they've played now, it's quite a positive start, isn't it? In fact, it's a very positive start.
Yeah, you've got to. I think there's no point at this stage kind of reading too much into what we're seeing, or aside from just trying to realise that there's got to be some positivity there. Could be, unbeaten, not conceded any goals yet in the league. That's good, and I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. I just think, or today, as people listen to it, I think that is like an actual barometer almost of against someone who we all assume is going to be one of the better teams, and you'd like to think a Tuesday night at Fratton Park brings with it a certain kind of intensity of match. I'd like to see how we end up. I'm not one for predictions. I ain't going to predict anything. All I predict is that I'm interested in that match quite a lot.
The other thing for me is that I'm really pleased about so far is the diversity of goal scorers that we've had, which I just don't feel like is something that's been present in the squad in the last few years, where it felt like we very heavily leaned on McNulty or someone else. Is actually so far to have had the number of different goal scorers we've had, and actually people like Westbrook stepping up and whatever, you think that's actually quite... It fills you full of hope, doesn't it, at this season, which of course is very, very dangerous. I wanted to ask one thing before we wrapped up. So, Dom, you've been to St Andrews 2-3 times now?
3 times.
How are you finding it?
Well, personally, because it's only like 25-30 minutes away, it's almost weirdly convenient. It doesn't feel like quite that, because we're used to having a bit of a commute to games. It's sort of more of a build up to it. It's sort of kind of weird just showing up and being there. The Tuesday night game against Exeter, kind of throw that one out. It's quite weird because I sit quite close to the centre of the pitch, so it's always felt quite full around me. Like all the seats tend to be full, but the wider extent of the stadium isn't. I was quite shocked on Tuesday when they announced attendance. It was like 1,500.
Yeah.
Like, this actually felt quite busy. So it shows my perception of things. The atmosphere, say in the first game, for about 20-30 minutes, maybe the entire first half, there seemed to be a concerted effort to get an atmosphere going. The Exeter game, so there just wasn't really an atmosphere aside from the Exeter fans. and a few attempts to sort of respond. And then the Bristol Rovers game, again, it was sort of more weighted towards the away fans. I think the only thing that really seemed to get people going was like the "you're supposed to be at home" chants and stuff like that. So everyone was just sort of jeering, going like, "Oh, nice one," or I think at one point we basically just where we basically just went, "We're supposed to be at home," so yeah, we've owned it now.
Yep. Okay, that's interesting. Right. Okay. So, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I do.
Yes.
Sorry, I do. I know we want to have a short one, but it's just occurred to me. So, kind of a strange decision, but I don't know the detail behind it. Was obviously Max wasn't on the bench at all the other game, having come on previously, and then he played in the under-23s today. What are we thinking? We don't know any detail. Is that just he's still not ready, so let's give him a bit more time, or because he wasn't entirely kind about kind of Max's performance against Bolton, was he, Robin? So I don't want to start rumours or anything, but it just feels like that could be one of two things, couldn't it? Either he's kind of doing a Robbins on him, or he's just actually just doing a good manager on him and giving him a bit more time.
All I know is in the summer, Robbins said that, I think we might have talked about this last week, but I can't remember. He'd said that with what happened to Jones, is they've been super cautious with him and Jones in returning them, and that the problem he's got with Biamu is that he's a little bit ahead of schedule,
right.
certainly mentally, and I think Max is very keen to get back out there. And what Robbins also admitted is that he feels pressure, not in a bad way, but because he's such a popular player, he feels kind of that Biamu's got sort of like a weight of momentum behind him for trying to be rushed back, because he feels like the fans want to see him on the pitch. And so I get the impression he's probably ready and not ready, but the showing against Bolton isn't a fair thing to judge him on, because the whole situation was ludicrous, which we talked about ad infinitum and then have been Paula's ward over for the last week or so on Twitter. So we should probably best not go back into that. But I think that I think that's a really serious injury, isn't it? What's fascinating to me is the fact that he went through for such a long period at the start of last season without scoring, that actually, not at the start of last season before, then when he did start scoring, actually his goal record wasn't too bad, was it? But now in pre-season, and he scored again for the under-23s tonight, he's like a goal machine now all of a sudden.
Still going, isn't he?
It would be incredible, yeah, if we brought him back and then Godden couldn't get in the team because Biamu was this absolute dynamite goal scorer from out of nowhere. So yeah, he's just taking he's the Ashley Barnes of League One. I gather it's just a really serious injury. On that subject, did everyone see this club tweeting Jody Jones was is one step closer?
Yeah. Good.
It's amazing to think that we're looking okay, but actually he will come in as an option. It's like a brand new signing. That's what they say. So I don't know if that answers that at all. Dom,
I feel better. I feel better after that though. I was a bit worried. I was a bit worried Robbins was being moody, just because you see rumours and people making stuff up all the time. You're never too sure what's come from where. But yeah, I think just give him a bit of time. And as much as the Bolton thing was crazy, kind of tactically, also you did see the signs that he just wasn't quite sharp enough yet.
No, he didn't do well against Bolton, irrespective of the kind of tactical argument is that whatever he was doing wasn't good. But then he scored again as well, even albeit that he was offside.
Yeah, true.
So yeah, goal machine Max. Dom, any final thoughts?
I suppose the one thing was that Bristol Rovers got an apology from the referee for a disallowed goal in the game, which was the one Tom Davis scored from a set piece.
Oh yeah.
I think it's quite odd they do that. There was another one last year for Walsall, which was the one Geordie Hawula scored against him at the Rico, where it just seemed like quite a marginal decision.
Yeah.
And they've just sort of thrown the referee under the bus a little bit.
Did we get an apology at Bolton at all in any general point?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's just sort of one of those things that managers will bring up in press conferences if it suits them, and Mark Robbins just hasn't decided to bring it up.
iFollow is a bad way of following these decisions because there's no replays, no nothing or whatever.
There are.
But there are. Well, I didn't see any on iFollow on Saturday.
I mean, they're dreadfully timed, but they are. They're there. Yeah.
I didn't see anything replayed back
They
live.
did one. Did you not? No, they keep doing them. But what's bad about them is that they do them for like really innocuous things, and also when important stuff's going on. So you've got a combination of replay going on of something that's not really that important, plus like sound and about 10-second delay on the sound as well. So it's just a hot mess of commentary and replays. But you've not seen them. Oh.
Genuinely no at all, because because I've got the CWR commentary and it's about 10 seconds behind what's going on, and I haven't seen a single replay. That's very strange. What I would say is that that disallowed goal that they were talking about, the thing that struck me more than anything is that there was no protest about it being. It just seemed like it was completely. Yeah. But apparently it should have stood. Is that what they're saying?
Yeah. Remember watching it live, just how loud and early the referee's whistle was. So it seemed quite odd when it was happening that the Bristol Rovers fans would even celebrate it, because it was just so obvious
it was
that the referee had blown the whistle. I've tried to watch it back to see where the foul is. There's sort of a little bit of wrestling between Clark Harris and Kelly, but you suppose maybe sort of just... don't know, they just accepted that, there's always wrestling in the box, so it was probably worth being disallowed, which is sort of quite odd attitude for the Bristol Rovers players to take. If I said it was a wrongfully disallowed goal, so it's just a very odd incident.
It seemed at times that Kelly and Johnson Clark Harris were glued to each other. That I'm not surprised at all if it was those two tussling, that the referee didn't look over and just kind of go, "Oh, you guys, what do you like?" It's kind of, it's never a foul if it's, as long as it's one of you on the other one, then all holds bad. It's fine. Carry on. I didn't realise that. Good observation. Right, okay, let's wrap things up then. Dom, thank you very much.
All right, good to be on as always.
Neil, thank you very much. And we will see you all next week. Bye.